Now available, paperback and Kindle Unlimited, ISIS, the main event. It's carnage inside of a steel cage when the goddess next door steps in the squared circle with the beast from the boss in this action-packed all-new ISIS series adventure. Get ISIS, the main event, paperback and Kindle Unlimited today.
AEW's booking is trash. And after watching last Wednesday's show, it's clear to me that the booking at AEW has fallen completely apart. Now, your AEW has been weak as related to booking ever since its inception in 2019. And back in 2019, when your Tony Khan founded AEW with the Young Bucks, Kenny Omega, and Cody Rhodes, his main focus was creating a organization that could compete with the WWE. Unfortunately, the AEW was lacking as related to one core element that a great wrestling organization has, and that is characters and story. Now, in order for you to have a successful wrestling organization, you need to have characters and story, because having characters and story establishes a structure for your organization, and it allows something that you could build a form on that audiences can get into. Now, it's important to have characters because characters are the people that the audience can go out here and connect with and become fan favorites of. And AEW really hasn't done a good job of developing characters, and that is really starting to hurt their overall product, and them having no story is making where people have no real reason to care. Now, in order for your wrestling organization to be successful, you have to answer this critical question that screenwriters and writers like myself have to answer, and that question is, why should we care? And it's hard to care about AEW at this point because they have spent next to no time developing any sort of characters, especially in their women's division, and they haven't really developed storylines to draw you in as related to the events going on in and out of the ring. And that's all due to the fact that AEW, while it spent millions on talent, they did not spend the money on a booker. And it's very important for a wrestling organization to spend the money on a booker, because a booker is a valuable person to have in your backstage area. Because having a good booker means you're going to get stories, and it's the stories that get the audience involved, and it's the stories that make the audience care. And a good booker can go out here and put characters together in storylines that allow the audience to come in to the matches and care about what's going on. Yes, AEW does have truly good matches. Unfortunately, there's no story to sell you on these characters, and there's no story to make you care, and that's really starting to impact the product that is being presented at AEW right now. Now, your AEW's booking issues, they started to manifest themselves in late 2021 when your Sammy Guevara won the TNT Championship from Miro. And when your Sammy Guevara won the TNT Championship from Miro, there was a big problem with Sammy Guevara. Yes, he was over as a wrestler. Unfortunately, he had not spent much time developing his character. And because he hadn't developed a kayfabe character, he started to put his personal life into the matches, and he proposed to his his girlfriend at the time. And at the time, he was doing YouTube and doing his vlogs, and it was revealed that he was also in a relationship with wrestler Ty Conti. Unfortunately, due to this whole situation not being a kayfabe, what happened was with Sammy Guevara is that he wound up alienating his core audience because he had proposed to one woman on the air, and he was revealed to be in having an affair with Ty Conti, And that wound up destroying Sammy's character, and it also destroyed Ty Conti's character, and that led to some serious booking issues. And what your Cody Rhodes tried to do to try to fix this situation did further damage, because Cody tried to come in and tried to take the TNT belt off of Sammy, but sadly this did damage to Cody as well, which led to him winding up with his character struggling, and it also led to Scorpio Sky also having his character suffer, and it all suffered because Tony Khan did not go out here and lead the locker room by going out here and taking care of the booking. Because again, you need characters in order to go out here and make the audience care, but the audience didn't care about Sammy because they thought Sammy was a jerk for having an affair on his girlfriend who he had proposed to, and that really made it where it was hard to sell Sammy Guevara. And this was the hairline crack as related to AEW's already weak booking, and AEW's weak booking continued to get worse because instead of going out here and developing characters like what your Tommy N was trying to do with Malachi Black, what they did was bury Malachi Black and the House of Black instead of going out here and developing them to be credible heels who AEW desperately needed. Instead of going out here and developing this heel faction to be a threat, what they did was job out those heels, and that was also another part of bad booking. Even worse, they took former champion Miro and put him in limbo, and this is again all showing the problems with the bad booking, which is what Tony Khan was trying to cover up by going out here and throwing stars at the audience. And this throwing stars at the audience, it got people's attention and it got pops. Unfortunately, what he would do when he would go out here and throw a star at the audience, like a Keith Lee or a Swerve Strickland or a CM Punk, is yes, you would get the pop for a minute, but because you didn't take any time to develop the characters, these stories basically went nowhere, as many of the wrestlers wound up working on Dark right after their introduction, and that really was something that hurt AEW story-wise, because most people don't watch Dark on YouTube like I do, and the problem was, instead of these wrestlers going out here and developing their characters and developing their stories, what happened is these wrestlers wound up getting lost in the shuffle. And that's what happens when you go out here and don't know how to develop characters and story. You got a lot of talent working matches, but they're not working in a direction that is moving the organization forward, because they're not being booked in feuds and they're not being booked in stories that make us get to know them or connect with them as characters. And that's been a problem with AEW over the last couple of months, and now we're starting to see serious problems with it. After Sammy Guevara, we started to further see problems because in the world title situation, we had your Hangman Page beat CM Punk. Unfortunately, CM Punk wound up breaking his foot, and this was the thing that wound up breaking AEW, because AEW didn't go out here and develop their wrestlers into characters, and they didn't develop their wrestlers into characters who could go out here and be a part of a story. Had they done that, they would have had the stars to go out here and replace a CM Punk, and they had to go out here and call in Jon Moxley, who was already recovering from an addiction and was also getting ready to go on vacation. They had to call in Mox to come in and cover up for their weak storytelling. Unfortunately, everything started to further fall apart because your Tony Khan really didn't know how to go out here and book a show. And because he didn't know how to book a show, what happened was things got worse as we led up to the all-out disaster, which was All Out 2022. And the disaster that was leading up to All Out 2022 was you had your Jon Moxley as an interim champion, and then you had CM Punk beat Jon Moxley. Then you had Jon Moxley beat CM Punk, a week before the All Out pay-per-view, and then you had Jon Moxley versus CM Punk in a match. And again, this is very confusing for a viewer, and I've been watching AEW since 2019, and this was the worst booked event I had ever seen, and it just showed again the problems that were going on at AEW. And again, all of these problems started because there was no real focus on developing story, no real focus on developing characters, no real focus on developing the mid-card into feuds, no real focus on building up stories in the women's division, and no real focus on developing actual characters who were faces or heels. And this is what led to serious problems over at AEW, which boiled over and exploded at the all-out disaster that was All Out 2022. Now, many will sit there and get upset at CM Punk for talking bad about AEW right in front of Tony Khan, but this really showed how the leadership at AEW, who is Tony Khan, really was really falling apart as a leader. Now, I go back to something I learned from Gordon Ramsay back when I was watching season 3 of Hell's Kitchen, which featured Rock, and he said to Rock that either you run the kitchen or the kitchen runs you. And what's happening with Tony Khan is that he's not running AEW. AEW is running him, and he's running straight into the ground because he doesn't know how to set a direction for the show, and he doesn't know how to set a tone in his locker room. And that's really affected all of the booking after the all-out disaster that was All Out 2022. Now, there was a moment when I thought Tony was going to be able to pull things out as related to redeeming AEW, but he's just shown me over this Wednesday's Dynamite that he just has no control over the situation. Now, at the Arthur Ashe, it looked like things were going to turn around in a positive direction for AEW, but over the last couple of weeks since Jon Moxley won the championship, the booking has fallen completely apart once more, and I started to see issues when I saw your Jon Moxley having to have a match with Juice Robinson. That's when I really started to get mad, because you had this Juice Robinson just show up out of nowhere, and he's challenging for a opportunity to get the belt, and that really shattered the really fragile AEW continuity, because I thought we had this thing called rankings, and the rankings were supposed to tell us that who was the number one contender. The rankings were supposed to tell us who was supposed to challenge for the number one contendership, but all of that went out the window because your Tony Khan heard, oh, Juice Robinson's available for a booking for a match, so I'm going to go out here, bring in this Juice Robinson out of nowhere, and that really destroyed AEW's really fragile continuity, because here you have a guy coming out of nowhere, and this guy's coming out of nowhere, no introduction to the audience. We don't really get to connect with him as a person, and that's a real problem, because here we have a guy, we don't know who this is. Yes, these wrestling marks know who Juice Robinson is, but the audience that you're trying to build on television, they don't know who this is, and we have no reason to care about this individual. Meanwhile, guys who you've had in matches on TV, we don't get to see guys like Miro, Ricky Starks, Murder Hawk Monster, Lance Archer, guys who have been built up to be considerable threats. We don't get to see those wrestlers on TV. They don't get a chance to develop their characters. They don't get a chance to connect with the audience. They don't get that opportunity. No, what happens is we get people thrown in front of us and no real formal introduction to say that this person is going to stay. And that really hurts your main event, because it makes it where your champion isn't looking like somebody who needs to be feared, or somebody who is considered to be dangerous to the locker room and the wrestlers in the back. I mean, that's one of the big problems over at AEW as related to the booking. You book random matches with random people with no real stakes, and without there being stakes, there's no reason to care. Because I watched the championship match between your Penta and your Moxley, and again, no build-up whatsoever. Here you have a guy thrown into a title match, and he's supposed to be a trios champion. No, your trios champion should be feuding with another trio like the Best Friends, or they should be out here getting ready to feud with the House of Black. But instead of having the trios champions out here in a feud where they're looking to go out here and build a story, what we get are trios champions thrown into matches, and they're just showing up out of nowhere without any build. And that's a major problem because, again, if you have no story as related to this match, it doesn't matter how spectacular it is. We have no reason to care, and that's a problem that's affecting all of the levels of the card at AEW, and that is because the booking has become absolute trash under Tony Khan's leadership. Under Tony Khan's leadership, the booking has been hot garbage for the last couple of months, and it's just been absolute garbage over the last 2 months because all of these story issues that they had since 2019 are coming back to haunt them, and that's all because they don't know how to go out here and develop characters and have them fit into a story. I mean, you have some of the best wrestlers in the business at AEW. Unfortunately, they don't have a structure for storytelling, and because they don't have a structure for storytelling, they don't have a model for telling stories, and because they don't have that model, they don't know how to go out here and introduce a character, introduce them to the audience, have them connect with the audience, and give us a reason to care. Or even worse, they don't give those characters time to develop, because you had Ricky Starks out here developing a great character, but he can't get the airtime. But they've got airtime for lames like your I forget what his name, Cole Carter. I mean, Cole Carter was wrestling on Dark, and they book him in a segment on last Wednesday where after the match with Darby Allin, he's got on a fake Sting mask, and he comes off and takes off the mask, and then they're wondering why the audience basically went dead. Well, the audience went dead because here you have a guy who nobody saw outside of a match on Dark, and you're going to make this a major revelation, and that only makes sense in a crackhead's mind, because you've got a guy who's only wrestled maybe 2, maybe 3 matches on Dark, and he's out here in a Sting mask, and then you go out here and use that to segue introducing Jeff Jarrett. And when you introduce Jeff Jarrett, you got a dead reaction, because everybody knows that Jeff Jarrett is the Grim Reaper of wrestling. He basically was there when WCW basically was about to go out of business in 2000. He was there when TNA basically was in its state of decline from 2009 to 2013 when Hulk Hogan came around. And all we're waiting now for is for the Hulkster to show up, and then we could basically put AEW 6 feet under. And sadly, when people talk about AEW, if it continues on this road, they'll be talking about why it went out. And the main reason I'm going to say it is going out and going into a state of decline is not because of the talent, because the talent is absolutely fantastic. No, it's because Tony Khan doesn't know how to lead a locker room, he doesn't know how to run a wrestling organization, and he doesn't know how to book matches. And this is why I said that AEW needs to go out here and hire a booker, because a booker can go out here and gauge the audience and gauge their reactions, because that's how you know who to push. I mean, you've got Jamie Hayter, who's getting over with the audience. You've got the Acclaimed getting over with the audience. You've got Ricky Starks getting over. You've got Hobbs getting over. You've got Miro and Malachi Black getting over. But none of these people are on television making compelling stories and making compelling must-see TV. No, many of these wrestlers aren't even on the dark shows, and that's embarrassing because you've got talent in the locker room just sitting there and doing nothing. And instead of you going out here and booking your talent, you've got really, really terrible storylines going on. And like your Nyla Rose versus Jade Cargo, which is hot garbage. And we really don't need to see Nyla Rose in a feud with Jade. No, you've got Willow Nightingale, you've got Abaddon, you've got all of these great ladies in the back, but you push somebody who, like a Marina Shafir, can't wrestle, or a Nyla Rose who the audience is tired of. And this is why AEW's ratings are starting to drop, because they push the wrong people. They don't develop their characters. They don't develop their stories. And sadly, it's like CJ Perry was saying, that Tony's got his favorites. Unfortunately, his favorites aren't connecting with the audience, and that's giving people reason to go out here and stop watching. And when you look at that show from last Wednesday, it gives you no reason to watch this show, because you've got your world champion in a match right after that Jeff Jarrett debacle, facing a guy, Lee Moriarty, who the audience knows absolutely nothing about. And we're supposed to care about Lee Moriarty, and we've never seen this guy outside of a match here or there. And again, no real focus on story, but it's a great match. It would have been a great match if we got to know him as a character and a reason for him challenging for the belt, which is, again, out of nowhere. I mean, Lee Moriarty wasn't even in the rankings. He was a mid-card, not even a mid-card, he's a bottom-card guy on Dark, and all of a sudden, he's in a match with the world champion, and you don't book matches like that. No, the world champion is only supposed to be facing guys who are at a high level, who have done the work on their characters, who have gotten over with the audience. That's who the world champion is supposed to be facing. Lee Moriarty, while he's a great wrestler, he has not gone out here and focused on other aspects like letting the audience connect with him and developing his character. So he's supposed to be at the level where he's supposed to be maybe challenging Ricky Starks or challenging Wardlow for the TNT belt, and that's another disaster. Overall, Wardlow did come in and try to save the TNT belt and bring back its prestige after Sammy tarnished the belt, but he's been hampered by bad booking from Tony Khan, who decides, hey, I'm going to take my TNT champion, put him in a tag team, which is one of the stupidest things I have ever seen. Wardlow and Samoa Joe should be fighting opponents for their belts and defending their belts and building themselves up. If Wardlow has the number 2 belt in AEW, he should be working towards being like the Macho Man Randy Savage, who was working towards using that belt to build up his prestige and build himself up as a threat so that he could eventually challenge for the AEW championship. But no, Tony Khan's bad booking has Wardlow teaming up with Samoa Joe for no reason and feuding with this embassy, which really is not anything the audience can care about. Now, if these guys challenged one-on-one for the TNT championship and were built up to be credible threats, but these guys were all jobbing on Dark, so there's no real reason to care when these guys like your Khan and your Toa and your Brian Cage challenge for the belt, because they haven't been built up and developed as characters. And that's all, again, due to Tony Khan's crackhead booking, and his crackhead booking basically shows me that he's just doesn't know what he's doing at this point, and he thinks that he can just slapdash a card together, but that slapdashing is really showing that he doesn't know what he's doing, because the road to full gear is showing how your AEW is stripping gears, and it's stripping gears because your Tony Khan did not build a well-oiled machine when he went out here and started AEW in 2019. And once Cody Rhodes took his hand off the stick shifter, they weren't able to shift into gear. And now the machine is stripping gears because Tony Khan, he doesn't know how to book a show. And your AEW is in a major place where it's on the brink of collapsing because, again, it's looking like WCW in 2000 and TNA in 2011. And when you see a wrestling organization this badly organized, it's again because of the booking. And right now, AEW's booking is trash. And your Tony Khan really needs to follow my advice and hire a booker. He desperately needs somebody who can go out here and craft stories. He needs somebody who can go out here and work with the talent in developing their characters, work with the talent towards developing their mic skills, and also work with them towards working safer. Because another reason why AEW is in trouble right now is because everybody's doing these big spots and they botched the spots. And AEW just needs a complete restructuring. And while your Tony Khan thinks hiring Jeff Jarrett will do that, no, it's not going to work like that because, again, your Jeff Jarrett is a disaster wherever he goes. And again, AEW, as I see it, desperately needs a real booker because you can hire all the talent you want to try to fix certain things, but if you don't have a booker, you don't have the person who is the most important asset of your team, because the booker is the one who goes out here and assesses the talent, assesses who has good chemistry with each other, and assesses who to put together for feuds, and also assesses what storylines need to go on the air, what talent needs to be presented on the air, and also can go out here and structure the storylines so that they flow and synergize with each other. And I haven't seen any of these shows flow and synergize like they did when AEW first started, and that really shows the impact that Cody Rhodes had on AEW, because when Cody was there, we saw all of the shows looking like they were flowing and synergizing. We saw the cards flowing and synergizing. We saw the feuds flowing and synergizing. We saw characters developing. We saw characters getting their voice and getting the screen time to develop. But ever since Cody left, everything has gone straight downhill, and it's gone downhill because Tony Khan, he's like MJF said, a mark as related for wrestling, and that was shown in Wednesday's show, where we get this Japanese guy who shows up out of nowhere. Yes, the wrestling marks know who he is in Japan, but we don't know who he is, and we don't have a reason to care about him taking on Orange Cassidy. And that's a major problem, because you just can't keep throwing talent at us without giving us a proper introduction, allowing these characters to develop on the show, and then eventually having the characters go out here and challenge for a title once they have earned the connection with the audience and gotten over. You just can't have randos showing up challenging for belts, because that destroys the credibility of your overall organization. It destroys the credibility of the overall structure of AEW, and that's why AEW is going from being in trouble to just being just hot garbage. And that's why I say your AEW's booking is complete trash. If you want to pick up my book that pays tribute to my love for wrestling, you can pick up ISIS the Main Event on Amazon.com. And if you have Kindle Unlimited, you can read ISIS the Main Event for free. And if you want to see me do more videos about wrestling, you can donate to my Patreon, my PayPal, or my Cash App by clicking the links in the description box. That's all I have to say for this video. You can comment, rate, and subscribe. Now available in paperback, John Haynes at Death's Door. The man who rules the world takes on the Greek god of death in this action-packed John Haynes series adventure. Pick up your copy of John Haynes at Death's Door at Amazon.com and other online booksellers everywhere. Now available in paperback and e-readers, E-Steam Horror of the Hyena Woman. Hell's aspiring angel takes on a wicked werewolf in this action-packed all-new E-Steam series adventure. Get E-Steam Horror of the Hyena Woman in paperback and e-readers today. today.